Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today, I drew a storefront. There were some potted green plants at the entrance. Besides the green plants that caught my attention, the bright contrast formed by the store's lighting and the metal door frame at the entrance also drew my eye. This was the initial motivation that made me want to draw it. Spray water before coloring. But you don't need to spray everything because the areas you haven't painted will dry quickly, so you can spray while you paint. The first layer of color is to determine the size and basic position of the door and the flower pot. The initial positions and sizes of the objects may not be very accurate, but the general positions can be determined. These can still be adjusted when outlining the contours later. The first layer of color should be as light as possible. When mixing the paint, add more water to make the color look transparent. That's very important. The first layer of color is applied using the wet and wet technique, which softens the edges and makes the color transitions look natural. This will effectively highlight the outline in the next step. The benefits of spraying while painting are obvious. It not only softens the edges but also lightens the overly dark colors. The main color scheme of this painting is olive green paired with gray. It's a very harmonious combination with a soft contrast that soothes the nerves. When outlining, it is essential to keep your hand steady. Drawing an accurate and smooth curve is usually not an easy task. Therefore, you can draw some short, curved lines instead, which makes it easier to achieve precision. When drawing, pay attention to keeping the distance between the two lines as consistent as possible. Feel free to modify any lines that you are not satisfied with. Find an angle that feels comfortable for you to draw these lines. Drawing these letters directly with a water pen might be a bit challenging for beginners. You can first sketch them with a pencil and then outline them. If you want to draw directly with a water pen like I did, you might need to be flexible and embrace imperfections. You can also use your creativity to make some changes to it. But the most important thing is that you need to relax a bit, and you will perform better. I used a lot of short straight lines to write these letters because I like the way they look square. If these lines are not adjusted, it might be a bit difficult to rely on colors to reshape them later. Try to meet the standards that you consider to be good. Now, the basic framework of the upper part has been drawn. Next, we will draw the tree on the right. Use a method you think is simple to generalize it. You can use segmented curves or segmented straight lines. The circular canopies on the left and right may look similar, but we need to differentiate them in terms of shape and lines to avoid making them look rigid. The canopy can be divided into several smaller sections, and try to make them look less uniform. The part where light and shadow meet needs to be emphasized. The shadow area at the transition line between light and dark is quite dark. Using a thicker black line when outlining can help emphasize it. When drawing the door frame, pay attention to keeping the thickness of each iron rod consistent. The structure of the door is symmetrical, so try to make it look symmetrical when drawing. The interior structure can be drawn selectively, because it is difficult to capture all the details in a watercolor painting without a pencil sketch. When drawing the leaves on the right that resemble palm leaves, just roughly indicate the direction of the leaves. Now, let's draw the last part, which is the flowers in the front. The flower pot on the left looks similar, while the one on the right is a small flower bed. Since the flower bed on the right does not look neat and orderly, I will omit some details. The plants in the middle have long stems and bare white flowers. Under the influence of light and shadow, they appear somewhat disordered. We can roughly draw a few straight lines and some closed irregular shapes to represent them. Now, let's draw the potted flowers on the left. The pots don't vary much in shape and size, and the white and pink flowers are also similar in size. We can create more variation in the size of the flowers in this section. It's worth noting the thin and elongated leaves behind these blooming plants. We can carefully delineate them with lines. These leaves will create an interesting contrast with the flowers in front. The main leaves can be drawn according to the picture, but the details will probably require some creative adjustments. It's really difficult to replicate the details in the picture exactly. Finally, we need to look for any parts that don't look quite right and make as many adjustments and modifications as possible. For example, we can thicken some lines or add decorative dots or short lines. This step is to make the line drawing look complete. Even without further coloring, it can stand as an independent pen sketch. Also, there are the two steps at the entrance. Don't worry about drawing a continuous and perfectly straight line. It's okay even if your hand shakes a bit. Sometimes, lines that aren't perfectly straight can actually look better. Some of the shadowed areas can also be darkened directly with a black pen. I learned this method from watching others draw comic line art, and I really like it. Now, you can go have a cup of coffee and take a break, which will also give the ink some time to dry completely. Then you can continue with the coloring.
The melody of the classical guitar softly sings, reminding me of green grass and wildflowers in bloom. Notes like colorful candy sweet with a hint of chill.
For the cylindrical tree trunk on the left, we can treat it as a sphere and apply 3 different shades of green. For the tree trunk, you can use a medium yellow and add a bit of lemon yellow. For the darker areas, you can mix in a little bit of ochre. The lamp that looks like a glass bottle should primarily be orange. You can transition from yellow to brown with medium, yellow, orange yellow, and ochre in the middle. Use the wet and wet technique to let them blend naturally. The coloring of the letters is done with flat wash. Use medium yellow to paint the original color of the letters, and then add a bit of orange to certain parts to create some variation. Additionally, the cream on this cake is left as white space. The base is painted with medium yellow, and the shadows are done with burnt sienna. Now let's paint the shadows under the letters. You can either dot some black or mix Payne's gray with a lot of water to create a very light gray. Since there is already a warm-colored base, you can just paint it on directly. All the shaded areas should be filled with this gray. When painting the shadow part below, you should add it while the surface is still wet, so you need to be quick. If you can't complete a stroke with one application of color, just dip your brush directly into clean water and continue painting. This will help avoid poor transitions. The shadows on the top should also be done with the same gray. For the protruding parts on the top, just apply a little bit of light yellow watercolor. Then start painting the tree on the right. First, lay down a base of yellow, which can be primarily lemon yellow with a small amount of medium yellow added. Mixing a little bit of emerald green with orange will give you a warm green. Add more water to make the color more transparent. Then add a bit of burnt sienna to deepen the green. If it's not green enough, add a little more green and orange. In this way, the tree has 3 layers. Now we need a slightly darker green, so we can add just a tiny bit of black to the warm green we mixed earlier. And selectively apply this dark green. Although you might see dark green shadows everywhere in the picture, don't add too much. Otherwise, you'll eventually lose sight of the previous layers, as this base color will blend everything together. For the lighting inside the store, if you have ample time, you can add more details. If not, you can omit some and just focus on capturing the main color tones. The colors here have a lower saturation because it's in the background and there's a layer of glass in between. So when mixing the colors, add a bit of light gray. Also, be sure to leave out the highlights of the lamp. Painting the details inside the store is very laborious and time-consuming, and it requires a lot more patience. Painting from light to dark is a very traditional watercolor technique. Its advantage is that it makes it easier for you to grasp the characteristics of watercolor and minimizes the chances of making mistakes. Ultimately, you will achieve a very nice layered effect. The method for painting green plants is pretty much the same. The key is to control the depth and warmth or coolness of the colors well. In the lower left corner, there are 4 flower pots with colors that are very close to each other. They are analogous colors but still have differences. So, starting from the base color, you need to identify their distinct hues. You can differentiate the 4 flower pots based on 3 aspects: hue, brightness, and saturation. For example, the 2 flower pots on the right have higher color saturation. The ones in the front have relatively higher brightness, The two on the left have lower color saturation, and the pot on the far left has the darkest color. The color of the door frame can have 3 to 4 levels. Think about it before you start painting. You can also prepare these shades of gray in advance. If you further differentiate them, there might be more than 4 colors, because some grays are cooler, while others are warmer. The decision is entirely up to personal preference. You can design for cool grays and 3 warm grays, or vice versa. The circular canopy on the right is darker and greener than the one on the left, because it is under the shade of the tree. So, when painting, pay attention to distinguishing the colors. The color of the two-level staircase in the reference picture is similar to that of the door frame, both being gray. However, in order to distinguish it from the door frame, I mixed orange and ochre and added a lot of water, making the color lean more towards a warm tone. Then gradually paint 2 layers of gray on top. With the warm colors as the base, the staircase will clearly take on a warmer tone, effectively distinguishing it from the door frame. The color of the floor tiles in the foreground must be light, because the sunlight is shining down from above. If the color is too dark, the entire light and shadow relationship will be disrupted. The rest is to paint the cabinets inside the shop, which will require a lot of black. The flower pot on the right is painted using the wet on wet technique, and many details are deliberately blurred to highlight the effect of the wet painting method. The flowers were painted with gouache,